then we will get rolling. Okay, cool. So first and foremost, thanks everybody again for joining the Cleveland area Microsoft Endpoint Manager User Group. Apologies for having to reschedule and appreciate everybody's flexibility for making the call today. If you're not already a member of the Meetup site, you can see that on the screen right now. Meetup.com/Kleeskug. And then, of course, on Twitter, same thing, Kleeskug. And a huge thank you and shout out to Patch My PC for sponsoring the event today. Find them at patchmypc.com and, of course, on Twitter at patchmypc. Jordan will probably talk a little bit more about all that. And then, of course, a huge thank you to Jordan for coming from Patch My PC to present to us today. So be sure to follow him on Twitter at Jordan the IT Guy. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Jordan. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful and resounding endorsement and introduction. Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared out here. And I think we're going to start off with a demo. But before we go into a demo of everything of that nature, let's start off with some quick introductions. So I know you introduced me. My name's Jordan. I'm also happen to be a Microsoft MVP in the EMS discipline. That's the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. A couple of quick things as we're going through here. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat. I'm used to doing these and getting questions all the time. If you have questions along the way here, please feel free, as I'm kind of walking through, to just go ahead. You can either drop a message in the chat, raise your hand, do whatever, and I am more than happy to address those questions along the way. I would much rather this be interactive, and I think that's one of the great things about doing online and virtual meetings is it can really enable that, rather than it just be me talking at you for 60 minutes as I kind of walk through and do a product. And I think then afterwards, after that, we're going to do some fancy stuff and kind of do some showcasing and some SQL and some PowerShell stuff, and maybe talk a little bit about Defender for Endpoint. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So the very first thing that I'm going to show you all today is I'm just going to kind of bring you out to our website out here at patchmypc.com. And essentially, if you've never heard of us before, what we do is we provide the ability to do third-party updates for a wide variety of products. First thing I'm going to cover and just want to let you know is that we do offer a free trial of our products. So if you want to try it out, you can just come out here, put in your company name, first name, all that jazz, and then click the request trial button. I'll be more than happy to set you up with a trial. You can go ahead and try it out. It's a full production ready version of our software. You'll be able to try out everything that I'm showcasing here. It's the exact same thing as if you were to use our software on an everyday basis. All right. We do have some FAQs that I usually like to go over. I'm not going to worry too terribly much about those for the purposes of this call. Just know that if you come out here, I'm going to go here to this. We do have some quick FAQs over here that you are more than welcome to go through and read. And if you have any questions again about any of this, I'm more than happy to go over that. Let's go ahead and skip over all that though, because that seems way more boring than just doing something like installing it. So I'm just going to go to patchmypc.com/MSI to download the file. If you didn't happen to want to remember that, you can also go to docs.patchmypc.com, which includes a full installation guide on how to install everything. And the very first thing you'll see on the front of the page is the link to how to download the publisher, which is what I'm going to install here. Okay. Going to go ahead and open that file up real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and do the absolutely most complicated software installation that you've ever seen in the entirety of your life. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick double click. I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to go next. I'm going to accept the terms our lawyers make us agree to. Go next. I am not going to check this checkbox. However, if you are an organization which does not have Configuration Manager, does not have WSUS, but in fact is Intune only, you of course are more than welcome to click this checkbox and then not have to deal with anything WSUS anymore. Congratulations. I'm going to go ahead and click next. This looks like a wonderful location right here in order to go ahead and be able to install a Windows service. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I'm going to go ahead and hit install. And then I'm going to make sure that you can, in fact, see my screen before I continue talking like you can see my screen this whole time. And everybody's just been too nice to correct me and tell me, no, we can't actually see your screen. You all can see my screen, right?
Yes.
We can see your screen.
We got it.
Okay, fantastic. I was getting super worried. I was like, wait, Wait, now nobody's answering. Maybe I've just been talking in a vacuum this whole time. Cool.
Start over.
So that's all done. We're good. We've got everything installed. I'm just going to go ahead and click finish. Hit yes. And we're good to go. I know it was, in fact, a pretty complicated installation process. It's so difficult. We do actually have a walkthrough. I'm going to go ahead and throw this over here. I know that was a little bit of a joke, but we do have actual documentation with an entire guided walkthrough. Another thing that I do like to mention at this point is that if in the event that you go, that was really easy, but it'd be super cool to have one of these engineering folk come over and help us do it, we do offer free setup calls as well. If you actually come out here and if you click on any of the installation guides, the very first panel will offer you a free setup call where you can actually schedule the setup button here, where you can actually schedule a call, and myself or one of the other members on the engineering team will jump on the phone with you and walk you through step by step this entire process that we are about to do. All right, we're done. We've installed the product. We're all good to go. Now, there's a few other little things we have to accomplish to make it all work. I like to think of them as kind of my 3 core requirements. There are 3 core requirements that we have to meet. The first of those 3 core requirements, now that we've got this all installed here, is that we need to make sure that wherever we've installed this publisher here, it needs to be able to access the internet. Now, for any network admins in the room who immediately went, I don't know about that, it doesn't need to be the entirety of the internet. It can just be some specific websites. And to that end, we do actually have a full documented list of every single website that our product reaches out on the internet for. I'm going to go ahead over here and grab that, and I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat for you. This list is what we call our allow list, and it gets updated anytime we add a new product to the catalog. And you can see it's got information like, hey, here's the URL, here's the port, and here's the why, so that you actually have a justification in your change control process of why it needs to be able to talk to the internet or why it needs to be able to talk to that specific website. So that's requirement number 1. Got to have access to the internet. It's also how we validate our license key and do a whole bunch of other things. Okay. Requirement number 2. Requirement number 2 is that we need to install this publisher on the topmost software update point in your config manager hierarchy. This is a config manager only. If you're an Intune customer, you can stop listening to me for the next 5 minutes. I mean, you can stop listening to me if you want, anytime you like. I won't. I'm the youngest of 3 children. I understand. I can be annoying to listen to, so you won't hurt my feelings. But and for config manager only customers, this is important. You must install this, the publisher, on the topmost software update point in the hierarchy. Now, if you have a complex environment and you've got multiple software update points, and maybe you're not sure which one is considered topmost, you can determine that by bringing up your config manager console. I'll go ahead and open that right there. And on the left-hand side over here, we're just going to drop on down to monitoring. And we're going to go to this thing called software update point synchronization status. That's this one right here. Okay. Now, once we click on that, we'll get a list of all of the software update points in our hierarchy. The server, where the synchronization source field, now mine is blank for reasons being that I don't like waiting 120 seconds for WSUS to do absolutely nothing. But this field here in your environment, the one that is considered topmost will be pointing at Microsoft Update, or if you're doing something where you've got like a WSUS server that's out in a DMZ somewhere, it'll be pointing at that WSUS server that's out in the DMZ server somewhere. Anyways, the server that is pointing at Microsoft, that is your topmost software update point. And the publisher must be installed on the topmost software update point. So that's requirement number 2. Brings us around to the final requirement, and if you can't guess, it has something to do with this very angry looking red X right here, this very sadness that's going on right here. And that is, we need a code signing certificate. In order for Windows Update Agent to trust the content that it downloads, and in order to assure that it will run something, it needs to trust that content. And the way that that trust is established is by using a code signing certificate. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can handle code signing certificate stuff. The first option here is that we can go generate one using PKI. If you happen to have a PKI infrastructure, you want to go buy a cert, whatever, it doesn't matter. And you just import the certificate. If it's PKI, take 2, they're free, do whatever you'd like. You just import it, make sure all your clients have it and trust it, and off you go. Option number 2, because we've done this for a little while now, we know how to generate a self-signed certificate that meets all of the proper criteria of code signing for WSUS. So you can actually click this button right here. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick for a second. And you can generate a certificate, give it a subject name, give it a validity, key length, all that jazz, and just click generate certificate and then export it and distribute it out to all your clients. And you would have it here. Again, take two, they're free. It just works. That's option number 2 for how you would handle your certificates. And then there is option number 3, also affectionately known as the make it not my problem option. And that is where in the world of Configuration Manager, we simply say, I'm just going to let Config Manager generate the certificate and deal with it for me. So if I click Show Certificate Now, you'll see that it says, hey, there's no cert. Well, starting in Configuration Manager 1806, Microsoft added the ability to create and manage third-party catalogs from different public vendor sources. As a result of doing that, they also added in an automation that generates a certificate if one is missing. I'm going to go ahead and walk through that process. Just go down here to the console. We're going to go down to Administration. I'm going to select my site server. And if I do go to Configure Site Components, you can either do it this way, or you can right-click it and go to Configure Site Components, Software Update Point. We're going to go to Third-Party Updates. Check the checkbox to enable third-party software updates. Say Configuration Manager manages the certificate and hit Apply. Now, by virtue of having checked this checkbox right here and having set this radio button here, the next time a software update point sync runs, it is going to determine that there is currently no code signing certificate and automatically generate one. Additionally, because under client settings over here and go to properties, and if I go to software updates, if I scroll down here, we'll see something called enable third-party software updates. This is going to leverage client settings via Configuration Manager to distribute that certificate out to all of the clients as well. Effectively meaning that I have to do nothing. I get to be a fully lazy configuration manager. I mean, efficient configuration manager admin. We're never lazy, only ever efficient. And just let config manager do its job and automate my problems away. So if I pop up here, the software library, and I go to software updates and all software updates, you can see, first of all, that I, in fact, only have these 3 Windows software updates currently. There's nothing up my sleeves. I don't have any weird software update groups. The only thing I do have configured over here is I do happen to have an automatic deployment rule that is configured for running Patch My PC software updates. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to synchronize the software updates. And for everybody who's familiar with it, we'll just go ahead and open our WSync manager log. What's going to happen here is we're going to see it wake up, and in a moment, we'll see 2 red lines of text fly by, which is the process by which it generates that certificate. And there we go. So we can see here that it detected there was no certificate, and then it needed to create and insert one. And so now, if I pop back over here and I hit Show Certificate, you can see I now have a self-signed certificate, also starting in BCA. And if I go ahead and hit Close, if I pop back over into my software update point over here in a moment or two, we will actually see that the certificate shows up here as well. There it is. This will also now cause that certificate get distributed down to all of our clients. Now we are fully done with setting up everything that we need to set up as far as prerequisites go for patching and application management using Patch My PC in Configuration Manager. That's it. That's all there is to it. The process for Intune and the requirements for Intune on the Intune side of it are pretty much the same with a few exceptions. The first one being you don't need to install in the topmost software update point, obviously, but you do need to have a Windows feature role that provides access to the WSys API. It's simple. It's a one-line PowerShell command, or you can use the RSAT tools to install the Windows Update Services components in a Windows 10 machine. Okay. I'm going to pause for a moment there and see, are there any questions before we go on to configure how updates or Configuration Manager apps will work going forward here? Cool. I'm not seeing any hand raises. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Let's continue on then. Actually, now I'm just curious. Is there anybody here, if you can either hit Control-Shift-K or use the reaction button to raise your hand. Is there anybody here today that already is a Patch My PC customer that already has the product all set up? I see at least one hand. Okay, a couple. All right, cool. I'm starting to understand why maybe I don't have quite so many questions. All right. Go ahead and put the hands back down. Thank you for playing along. I was just kind of curious. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we're going to pop over here into updates, and let's go ahead and configure some updates. Now, we can go through and we can scroll and we can do a whole bunch of right-click options and everything in here. But before we get started on that, what do I do, or how can I find out of the products that Patch My PC has currently, what do I have in my environment? How can I determine that? Well, if you click on the database scan button over here, we have a tool that will let you scan your environment to determine what updates might be applicable for you based on the software inventory you have. You can go ahead and click that. As you can see up here, I already have a server name and a database name up here. I'm going to go ahead and click Query and sort by count. This now lets me get an idea by weight on what products Patch My PC supports for patching and applications to go ahead and publish into my environment for patching. So I might, want to patch Ghostscript because it's pretty prevalent in my environment. Maybe I want to patch this. Maybe I don't want to patch something like KeyPass because it's only on a few machines. And I can make those decisions. Additionally, for the lazy admins efficient admins in the room, we also have auto publishing rules. That's these two options here. Essentially, what we can do is we can say, hey, every time a sync runs, run this database scan. And if software is on more than X number of devices, where X is determined by this numerical value here and here, go ahead and automatically generate the updates for that product going forward. Or go ahead and generate the application for that product going forward as well. This is really useful for whenever we add new products into our catalog and put them out into the environment. For more details about everything that we have in our catalog, it is available on our website. You can actually come out here and go to what's called the supported products page, patchmypc.com/supported products. I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat here because while I could sit here and read off every single one of these products in the entirety of this list, I imagine you would be very tired of hearing me talk by then, and I would probably have a voice by the end of the day. So instead, we have the list publicly available out here on our website, and you can search this. It's available to be downloaded, so you can sort and parse through it as well, all through here. If there is something on this list that is not here and you would like it to be here, you can actually come out and click the Request a New Product button. Clicking the Request a New Product button will bring you to our Ideas portal. Something that Patch My PC is incredibly passionate about is being able to connect and listen to our users and listen to our customers. We want to develop the things that you're interested in. We want to build the things that you are interested in at the end of the day that have value to you and add value to you. So the best way that we do that is we take feedback from our customers. So if there's ever something that you'd like to see us add to the product, whether it's a new app or it's just a new feature, you could come in here, click Add a New Idea, and request that we consider evaluating it. We do have some criteria that we use to evaluate whether we will add new features or new applications. And you can read more about those by clicking this link here at the top of the page. This will provide you with the criteria we use for determining whether we can add an application or an update into the catalog and continue to support it going forward. Additionally, because one of our core values happens to be no shenanigans, we really value transparency to our customers and our end users. We always provide a public roadmap of what we are currently working on. There isn't actually a private one. There might be some things that we're thinking about that we haven't made any decisions on, but once we made decisions on things, we put them out here, we make them available to you so that you can see what we're currently working on and what we're currently planning on for shipping for items that month and where we are at in the shipping and building and process. Cool. So that's all super great for determining what we need to go about patching or what we need to go about deploying. And that's, all nice and well. But what about actually deploying stuff? That's a useful step to take. Well, we can always just check some checkboxes and do some things. But before we do that, I want to add a couple of customizations. So if I just right click this, you'll see that I have a few different options that become available to me. And this is where our tool starts to become really powerful and come into its own. And that is in the level of customization that we have. Now, at the all products level, I typically don't like to do a lot of customization at the all products level, but it's important to note that you can do it. And there is at least one feature I do like to enable at the all products level, and that is managing my installation logging. If it's an MS5 file, I'm interested in getting some of the verbose logging information for it, just because of the fact that sometimes it can be particularly useful and helpful, especially for apps and for updates. So I'll just go ahead and turn that on because why not? And hit apply in the bottom right hand corner. That's going to go ahead and set that for option for any product that is capable of supporting it. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and configure a few products. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control F. If I didn't want to hit Control F, I could also just click the little search button down here. And if I go ahead and type in good old Notepad++. Notepad++ is great. Everybody uses it, right? It's fine. I'm going to go ahead and check this checkbox and again hit apply. Now, usually in the cases of most updates, that's fine. That's all we have to do. We check the checkbox, we hit go, and everything's a-okay, happy, scrappy, hunky-dory. Now, there are some scenarios, though, in which that might not be the case, and Notepad++ does happen to be one of them. Now, the challenge with Notepad++ is that when it updates, if the application is open, it won't fully update. It'll update the registry keys, but it won't update the binary itself if it's open. So how do we deal with that? Well, if we right-click this particular update, we can actually go down and we can choose stuff like Manage Conflicting Processes. Go ahead and choose that right there. And this will actually allow me to dictate the behavior of what we should do if the application is open when we go to update it. I've got 4 different options here. Now, all 4 of them are in some way, shape, or form guaranteed to annoy someone, but that's okay. We just have to pick the one that works the best for us and for our users in our particular or unique environment. Our first option here is we can just perform the installation. Well, as mentioned, in the case of Notepad++, probably not going to be a great user experience, and the security team is going to be annoyed with us because we end up leaving remnants of files everywhere. So we won't pick that one for this. Our next option is we can just automatically close the conflicting application process for the installation. Okay, that's fair. In some scenarios, that might be a great solution. For some products, for some machines, just closing the app with no reason might be a perfectly acceptable solution. In fact, it might be the most desired solution. But somebody somewhere is going to yell at us about it. It's fine. Option number 3, we can skip the installation when the conflicting process is in use. That's guaranteed to make the security team annoyed because nobody's ever going to close their application. They're always going to be like, well, I'm just using it all the time, and so it never updates. So I'm not going to pick that one. But what I am going to pick is I'm going to notify the user about it instead so that we can start to have a conversation and have a dialogue and start some negotiation processes. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's notify the user. I'm going to give them 300 seconds to actually read the notification and make a decision. I'm going to prevent them from reopening it while the application is updating. I'm going to force the notification to be displayed. I don't care what they're doing. If they're presenting a PowerPoint, I don't care. I want them to see it. I want to have the conversation. I'm going to allow the user to defer it 3 times. 3 times shall be the number thou shalt count. And then if the timeout is expired and the user ignores me, well, they've clearly just left the application open and gone to lunch, in which case I'm just going to close it and update it. It's Notepad++. It's relatively resilient to just being closed. So I'm just go ahead and choose that option. Well, that's all well and good, and it's super great that I configured all those things, but what does this look like? How does this work? Well, if we click Manage Default Settings down here, we'll get a preview of what we can configure the conflicting process to look like. If I just click Preview how it'll appear, it'll actually display it for me in the bottom right-hand corner. Your organization requires an update for application name. Now, this is pretty neat, and, off the cusp, that looks pretty nice and pretty neat and ordinary. However, maybe you have some users who've been fooled before by weird pop-ups in the bottom right-hand corner of their computer, and they go, oh, maybe I shouldn't spend so much time on Craigslist whenever they see a pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner, or whatever it is that they decide to do on their lunch break. So instead, let's go ahead and make this look a little more trustworthy to them. So I'm just going to go ahead, and up here, I'm going to write CLEMEMUGIT. If I click Preview how it'll appear, it now says that the CLEMEMUG IT requires an update for application name. All right, well, that's cool, but maybe they are a super suspicious user and they're like, that security team with their harpoon phishing techniques, they aren't gonna get me this time, and they're just trying to ignore it and pretending it's not there. All right, let's go one step further. We actually provide a couple of different GIF options here. So I'm just go ahead and choose that. So now they can see that it's got our nice friendly company logo here, and that they should clearly trust that this is in fact the IT team trying to get a hold of them and convincing them to close and update their applications. And they can then make the decision to do it now or to snooze it for a little bit later. Additionally, for any of you who have users who are in different countries or use different language OSs, depending on where you are in the world or what type of company you work for, you may have legal requirements to provide alternate languages. We do have the ability to customize the text in this window, as well as to recognize what language is in use on the operating system, and to switch to a different customized field based on that language decision. So we've got a lot of different options here for this, and we can add and we can customize and we can do all kinds of different things for it. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as the default for here for now. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's probably fine and hit OK. If there was additional processes that I wanted to manage or to close for Notepad++, I could actually click Manage Process here, and I can see the list of all the processes that need to be closed before it will update. I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this and click Apply in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay. I can add a couple other things for this if I wanted to, but Notepad++, again, is a pretty simple update, and I don't feel like I need any of these other customizations for this. So let's go ahead and get one other update configured. It's everybody's favorite update. I think, at least that's what I've been told. It's everybody's favorite update. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it in Google here, and we're going to go ahead and do good old Google Chrome, and we'll hit Apply. Again, if we right-click it, we'll see that we have some right-click customization options. But you may have noticed that some of the options have changed. In fact, we have a few additional ones here. The first one that you may have noticed is we have the ability to disable the self-updater. For products where we know how to disable the self-updater, we'll provide you an option where you can click and we'll just automatically disable the self-updater for you when it gets updated. Maybe you need to have more granular control over it. Additionally, if we know how to delete the desktop shortcut that gets created in the public folder, we'll provide an option to enable you to do that as well. I'm going to click that to again disable the shortcut that gets created. And last but not least, maybe for some reason you have certain actions that you need to occur after a product installs. In my case for Google Chrome, I actually would like to set the home page to a particular website. So if I actually was to do something like, hey, I'd like to add custom pre and post scripts, and I can actually browse out to a script and I can choose a particular script out here. Now I happen to have one. I'm actually going to make sure that I have a home page here. Looks like it's set to patch my PC at the immediate moment. Does MeMug have a website? Let's see. DLEMEMUG. Let's find out. Ooh, we have a meetup page. So what I can actually do here is I can just go ahead and say, let's go ahead and make the meetup page be the default homepage for the feature for this particular event. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's use this script. I'll say open. And that's all I need to do. Every time it updates now for that browser version, it's going to run that PowerShell script to set that to be the homepage. And we'll go ahead and say, OK. We can get more complicated in there. We can add additional files to it, make that way more complicated if we need to. We can build our own custom PowerShell scripts that reference those files, and we can add a lot of additional complexity into the environment through that. Cool. The one last thing I'm going to show you here in updates is we do also have the ability that for all of the updates that are currently in the WSUS database that we've ever added in, you can take a vulnerability list that you've gotten from a vulnerability scan engine, such as Defender for Endpoint or one of the other various toolings out there, and you can actually go ahead and grab that CSV file, present it to us, and if you click Process, we'll run it against the information that's in the catalog and in the WSUS database to work to determine, are there any patches that remediate those specific vulnerabilities that we have available? Kind of a cool last little thing here from a security perspective on an updates area. Are there any questions on how I've configured these two updates for us as we're going forward to look at some other things? Fantastic. Let's go ahead and get some applications configured here real quick. Actually, while we're getting applications configured, I think what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and kick off a sync, and I'm going to let those updates start to get maybe built out. Or maybe I'll configure updates for apps first. Let's configure our apps first. I'm going to go ahead and check the checkbox to enable creation of applications in Configuration Manager. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Features tend to work better when you turn them on. Now, for updates, I didn't click on options because there really wasn't anything over here that I necessarily needed to configure. However, in apps, there are a few things that I would like to configure and go over. If I jump into options, the first one here is I do need to provide a UNC path to a source folder of where I would like the content to live. I also need to provide the SMS provider connection so I know how to talk to the SMS provider for when I'm creating applications and when I'm utilizing the SDK components. There are some additional application creation options. I'm not going to worry too terribly much about them. I'm only going to configure a couple of them, but it's a couple that are good to note. Is we do code sign our PowerShell detection methods, and we do have the ability, if you're using OSD and if you're using MDT integrated with OSD, is you can choose to not include the version in the application's name so that you don't end up breaking your task sequence along the way. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the checkbox to move applications to a specific folder. And I'm going to say that I would like all applications that get created in the future to get dumped into the Patch My PC folder. I'm also going to leave this on its default down here for when a new application update is available to just update an existing application's metadata, but I am going to check to retain a previous version so that I have one old version behind here. I'm just going to go ahead and check that and hit 1. Other than that, I'm happy with these settings here, and I'm simply going to click OK and apply. All right, let's go ahead and get an application configured to be made available. If I go ahead and hit search, and I type in IGOR, good old Igor and 7-zip, I'm simply going to check 7-zip and hit apply. Again, over here, I can right-click it, and I can do a whole bunch of right-click customizations the exact same way as what we did for updates, but with a few additional options. The first one I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and say that I would like to turn on that advanced installation logging again for these MSI application installs. Just hitting the checkbox and enabling verbose logging and prefixing the log with a computer name for it. Go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, you know what, for 7-zip, I want it specifically to live in this 7-zip folder. And I'll hit OK and apply. Now, if I right click it, you'll see I do, of course, have a bunch of other options in here. I could customize the icon for it. I could customize its name. I could display it as a featured app in Company Portal if I wanted to push it via Company Portal instead of Software Center. There's a bunch of different things. I could modify the command line. There's a ton of different customization options. 7-zip's pretty straightforward, though, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave 7-zip alone in its default state. Cool. Let's go ahead and kick off a sync. And while I'm kicking off the sync, I'm going to walk you through some of the differences between Config Manager and how we set up Config Manager versus how we set everything up for Intune. Most of it is all the same. I just want to highlight a few of the differences. And I like to demo Config Manager a little bit just because some of the logs are a little more verbose and a little bit easier to see and follow along with than when doing an Intune demo. Pop over here into the Config Managers over here into sync schedule. I'm going to go ahead and start that sync manually for now. Go over here. Let's open up our Patch My PC log file, and we can actually have this run over here. So if we do want to see that rolling in the background, you'll see that it's running through and it's generating those updates, and it's sending them off to WSUS while we're talking. Now, as far as Intune goes, the major differences between Configuration Manager and an Intune configuration is we do need what's called an Azure App Registration to generate the updates and applications. In order to do that, we need to have that app registration configured with a set of 4 permissions. And we need either an application secret, or we can also now support, starting as in the new build that just came out yesterday, we can now support certificate-based authentication as well. So you can actually use certificate-based auth for how we communicate with the Azure app registration. Again, all of these settings should look very familiar. And that's things that are just, copying, deleting things forward. It's almost the exact same structure as what it was for applications and updates in Configuration Manager. And we do, of course, have the ability to retain a previous version so that we can roll back and redeploy a previous version if we so desire. Other than that, this is the biggest change. The second of large change that exists when it comes to dealing with Intune updates and Intune apps is that while Configuration Manager has the ability to automate installation of different things through the AP through its own internal calls of ADRs or through PowerShell calls, Intune does not. And so to that end, we have the ability to right-click and create what are manage assignments. So if I go ahead and click this, and if I right-click it, I can actually go down here and I can say, you know what? I would like to manage the assignments of this application, and I would like that every time a new version comes out, I want it to be deployed. Or every time a new version comes out, I want it to be forcibly installed on a set of machines, or I want a new version to uninstall. And I can actually go through and I can configure that in here directly. And the same thing over here is true for updates. Now, we also have the ability that we've just added in recently where we can go ahead and we can start to pause different components of product updates as well. This is a brand new feature that just came out. So maybe you've got a particular feature you want to put a pause on. You don't want to patch it for a short period of time. You can actually click pause and you can say, hey, don't get new updates for this one for maybe the next 2 weeks or something like that. Okay. It's a brand new feature, just came out yesterday. We're always adding new features all the time, and it looks like it actually just finished, and it went ahead and created some updates and it created some applications inside of Configuration Manager for us. Couple of quick notes. We do run our syncs. You can configure this sync however you would like. By default, running the sync every day at 7 p.m. is usually pretty decent. However, just be cognizant that we do release our catalog updates 3 to 5 times a week, usually Monday through Friday, and they typically are released by no later than 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Every now and again, Google Chrome will delay an update release to the point where we have to push that time slot back, but typically sometime in the late afternoon in Eastern time, we're releasing our catalog update. Now, you can get notified when that catalog update is released if you simply pop over here on our website, jump out to our website here real quick, if I can find the right web browser tab. And if you simply drop down to, sorry, if we drop on down to, I forgot we've changed how our website is organized here. Now I actually have to remember where it is. Catalog release history, we've changed it. You'll see that we have our catalog release breakdown. We've got releases of our different catalog updates, but over here, you can actually subscribe to get notified when that catalog comes out, and it will include all the different vulnerabilities and fixes that we are releasing that day. So for example, here's yesterday's catalog. Yesterday's catalog includes all of these updates. We use a red, yellow, green stoplight system to indicate things that are either security, bug fix, or feature release updates in a particular release. And again, you can just subscribe and get notified about that there's new updates to then roll out to your environment. Additionally, we do provide the ability to generate alerts that tells you that the publisher is working correctly. Those alerts come in a couple of different flavors. You can either choose to get them via email or via a webhook. The webhook is available through Microsoft Teams, and for anybody who's using Slack, it's also available using Slack. I'm going to pop over here in Teams real quick just to show you what that looks like. So you can actually see here that it's created an application. Here's the release notes. Here's the severity and the classification of what it is for updates. If we scroll up a bit, we can actually see here that we've got, oops, if I scroll up too far, a Google Chrome update, and here's all the CVEs that were remediated with this particular update. Last couple of quick things here is that we do have the advanced tab. There are a few items on our catalog for various legal reasons. Sorry, don't know what it is. Whenever I get to this section, I just always develop this terrible cough. And whenever you do this one, you do have to download the content manually. So there's a few different products for this. There's about 10 or 15 different products, a couple of products that have duplicate counts for them. But you can actually just download them, stick them in here, and if you hit the checkbox, we'll just go ahead and turn them into an application or an update anyways. All that matters is you have to go download the binary for us because for, like I said, legal reasons, we can't download it. And if you click more info on this tab, it'll actually take you out to the list of what those products are. So it's things like, Bluebeam, Java, and a few others like that. Cool. We do have some built-in reports that are available to you for free. You don't even need to buy our product to use it. You can just download the publisher, install it, run the report installer, remove the publisher afterwards, and we'll go ahead and give you those SSRS dashboards totally for free. We also back up our product automatically anytime you click apply. And of course, you can change those configurations and you can manually specify a backup to run periodically. It used to be that we backed everything up into a flat settings file. We've recently changed that so that it actually backs it all up into a cab file. So that includes other things like language and other configurations for things like the conflicting process notification. Our product automatically updates itself anytime that it completes a sync, unless you disable the self-updates by checking the checkbox here. And we do offer a preview ring in the event that you'd like to try out our preview builds. You'd simply check this checkbox here, and you'd be able to check out all of our preview builds and new features as they get released. I'm going to stop there for just a brief moment so that I can get a drink, because I've been talking almost 45 minutes straight nonstop, and see if anybody has any questions before we go ahead and flip through the Config Manager console and watch the product in action on an endpoint. Jason, go ahead. I see you got your hand raised there.
Sure. And I don't know if you're going to get to this when we go into the console, but how does your product handle differences in application versions, say like with Config Manager apps? Do you leverage any sort of supersedence capabilities, or do you just build that into your detection methods to be able to detect when like a newer version of an app is installed, to prevent any sort of deployment conflicts with different versions of apps thinking that they need to apply on a device?
Sure. So the question is how do we handle application versioning? And the answer to that question is a very consultant answer, which is, well, it depends. So I wasn't going to show it earlier. I kind of sort of breezed past it. So let me come back here and zoom in. It depends on how you configure this option right here. If you choose this first option here, what we do is we update the application in place. That means the application's object information, its app ID and everything else stays the same, but we update the content and we update the metadata for its versioning so that it just moves forward. Technically speaking, by doing so, you do lose historical information about that application and any of the configuration that was applied for it, as well as the historical content for it. You have another option, though, here called create a new application without modifying the previous ones. That's this radio button here. That instantiates a new application and a new version. There's no supersedence logic that's built there. And the reason for that is because supersedence in Configuration Manager gets really, really nasty and messy once you exceed about 10 or 15 different iterations of supersedence. It starts to just break. And so we have these two radio buttons here, and then we have the option to retain previous versions where you can hold on to those. So what you can actually do is, depending on which one of these you choose, you can end up with a historical set of copies of old versions of the application. So you can actually set it up to have the last 5 versions in some way, shape, or form. So where we either create a copy of it, so that you've got to have version 6, 7, 8, and 9 out there, or where you would have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 out into infinity if you were to just choose this option and didn't choose to retain the previous set or delete old ones. Does that address your question on how we handle application supersedence?
Mostly. I guess on your detection methods of apps, are you looking for specific versions? Like say, okay, if we're deploying version of an app, 4.2.
Yep.
Is it looking for 4.2 specifically, or does it have intelligence built to say if 4.2 or a newer version is there?
It's 4.2 or a newer version.
Like,
yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
great.
So what and I can actually show you that, and you can actually look at it inside of the console. So let me just pop over here to the console real quick, and we can actually go ahead and address that. So we pop into software library. If we drop on down here to, let me pop through here. That's interesting. I may have to rerun a sync. I know somebody mentioned earlier that there was a feature that needed to be addressed where sometimes you had to rerun a sync a second time. So we'll go ahead and just rerun a sync real quick here. I think that somebody mentioned the other day that we had a demo bug going on. So let me rerun the sync while we're looking at applications over here. So we have our application here, good old 7-zip. If I go ahead and right click the properties of this, and if we drop into software center, or sorry, deployment types, script, and edit, I'm gonna go to detection method. You'll see that we have a PowerShell script here. We actually make the PowerShell the detection method. The entire method for this is all just here. You can actually come out here and take it and look at it. So we're actually looking for, so what we're looking for 7-zip would be, this is the application information for it. This is the application version that we are looking for it in order for it to be satisfied as being installed. And I believe for applications, we can double check, but I believe it's greater than or equal to. Let's see, version, requirement, detection. Yeah, GE, greater than or equal to. It does its
okay, yeah, that answers my question. That's great. Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. So as you can see, we have an application. It's been over here. It's been created. It has nice, pretty information for Software Center. You can see it's already been distributed out to the distribution points. And again, as we were just talking about just there, we do have some content out here, and we have, of course, our detection script and our detection logic. Any other questions real quick here? I'm just going to kind of check on my software updates here and see if it's happily chugging along here or if it got grumpy with me for some reason. I think I remember somebody mentioned that our lab had a bug the other day with something that was going on where we had to rerun the sync twice or something of that nature. I think I actually know what it was too. Yeah, it looks like it just went through there. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. All right. So as you can see, we had our application get created, kind of walked through all that. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and deploy this application. I don't think you need to watch me click next, next, next. I think everybody here has clicked next, next, next enough times in their lives. And I know I say that off the back of me having you watched me click next, next, next to install our product. But this time I'm just going to deploy this application using some PowerShell. I'm just going to deploy the application out to all users so it shows up for my client. And then let's hop on over here and take a quick look at our updates. Go ahead and minimize this. So as you can see, we now have 2 new updates over here that previously weren't here. They look like a Windows update. They smell like a Windows update. They taste like a Windows update. They are basically look like any other Windows update at this point. It's just for Google Chrome and for Notepad++ instead. In this case, they've got the Patch My PC article ID, but they otherwise look and act and behave exactly like Windows Update. What's cool about that is it also means that they follow the rules of ADRs. So we can actually have our ADR over here. I pointed this out earlier, but I've got one. And if I go to software updates, you can see it just says, hey, go get all updates that are not superseded, released by the vendor Patch My PC. And if I pop over here to evaluation schedule, it says run it anytime a software update point synchronization completes, and then go ahead and deploy it to these 3 collections, which should mean that I should have a software update group over here. And it in fact does have 3 collections deployed to with 2 updates inside of it. And it is now deployed out to my test client. With that in mind, let's go ahead and hop on over to our test client and see how it looks. All right, so this is my demo client, just a regular old workstation running Windows 10. And in a moment here, we're going to have Software Center is going to pop up, and Control Panel is going to pop up, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of logs here. We're also going to have a couple of applications open just to ensure that they're there so that we can see our blocking process occur. As you can see, it is the absolute fastest Software Center on the face of the planet with how fast everything got loaded there. I'm just going to be totally transparent with you. I absolutely am cheating. There's totally a scheduled task that's running as soon as I logged in that kicks off software update scan to ensure that everything shows up quickly for the purposes of demos, because otherwise you'd have to wait for software update scans and all that jazz. So it is that fast because of the fact that it's a demo lab and we're just poking it and poking it. So with that in mind, though, I've got Notepad++ open here, and I do happen to have a Notepad++ update right here. Before I click the button, though, I want to bring this up, and I want to zoom in so that you can see that I'm currently running Notepad++ version 791. And if I just go ahead and right-click refresh and right-click refresh and zoom in one more time, we can see it really is 791 and Google Chrome version ending in 113. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click install on Notepad++. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stare at it. I'm going to stare at it so aggressively that it doesn't even know what to do. Pop down here into CCM cache. And in a moment here, logs, not CCM cache. And in a moment here, we're going to see a log file spin up called Patch My PC Script Runner. In fact, right there it is. So Script Runner is our little tiny binary that helps run all of those customization actions behind the scenes. That's what causes this little notification to pop up here. And we can actually see that it got called by virtue of the fact that it saw Notepad++ was running, and it is one of the list items on the kill process list. So if I go back over here, I can do one of 2 things. I can either just close Notepad++ like a good user, or I can say, you know what, it's fine. Let's close all and update. It's going to close Notepad++. If I bring my Notepad log up here, we can see, hey, we saw that it was allowed to close. We closed it. We ran the install, and it's now done, and an exit code of 0 can be returned. We pop back over here to Script Runner, Control Panel. We'll see we were running 791, and if we right-click and give it a refresh, we can see that we are now in the current version of 8.2. And if we go ahead and double click Notepad++, we will in fact see that it opens up all happy days with a script that doesn't actually do anything. Cool. And we can see it returns installed in Software Center. Let's go ahead and do Google Chrome. Pop Google Chrome up in here just to close it and reopen it real quick. That all looks good. Again, if we right click and refresh, we can see that Google Chrome's running version 1.13. That's very, very old. I don't want that. So let's go ahead and install the Google Chrome update over here. And if we pop back over into our logs, we can, of course, watch the process go through. Now, something you might notice here, if you remember, we enabled verbose logging for MSIs. And because this is an MSI-based installer, it went ahead and spun up a actual MSI log, including all the verbose logs about MSI. So we pop over here, and if we scroll up, we'll see that there's a folder called Patch My PC Install Logs. And inside of that is the Chrome MSI installer log. We can actually watch the entirety of the MSI installing process go through here. In just a moment or two, we should actually see this go ahead and finish up. And there it goes. So it just finished. If we pop back over here to our other log file, I can actually see that it then continues on with its happy life, all happy days. It said, hey, let's go find some shortcuts. And as you can see, we used to have a shortcut there, but we don't anymore. If we scroll on down here, we can see that everything is happy and it ran this at Google Chrome homepage. If we go ahead and right click this and hit refresh, the Google Chrome is no longer on the super old version. It's on an older version still, but hey, it's a lab. And so it's running version 97 up here. Cool. And if we go ahead and open up Google Chrome and launch it, we can see that it does set our home page to the user group meetup page. Cool. So we've now managed to update 2 different applications. And if we open up Software Center, let's go ahead and install good old 7-zip. So as we can see over here, we don't have 7-zip at all currently. I'm just going to go ahead and hit install. And that's going to go ahead and get 7-zip all installed for us. If you're curious about what any next steps are, or if this was pretty cool and you thought it was interesting, of course, again, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a free trial of our software. It is a free, full-fledged, production-ready version of our software. You can come out here to our website and click the whole request a trial button, and it'll go about it. And if you're curious about anything like pricing or whatever, we do have pricing information. It's all publicly posted out here on our website. You can actually see it's got the whole Enterprise, Intune, Enterprise Plus, all of our different licenses, and all of our pricing is all publicly available right on our front page. And that wraps up our demo for Everything Configuration Manager. We have a couple extra minutes, I think, here. So if we've got any questions about it for now, let's go ahead and take any questions. And if there's anything in particular on the Intune side or whatever, we've got plenty of time. I can jump over and I can showcase how the Intune features work as well. Like I say, when I'm demoing both, I tend to demo Config Manager instead, just because the logs are a little bit more easier to read through and see. Any questions? No questions? Everybody fell asleep. There's a question. Go ahead, Brent.
So I know you guys have Beyond Compare on there, but the licensed version is a text file. Is it easier to do that? Like I tried it with like a MST file, that didn't work. I tried changing the script that it starts off with to add it in, and that didn't seem to work either. Is there a good, easier way to get that to work that you know?
Which product again?
On Compare.
Beyond Compare. For that one, I don't know in particular off the top of my head, but there's a member of our team, Andrew. Andrew would have the most insight into how the licensing for that works and the most information into how the switches for that work. I would definitely kick that. I don't think he's here on the call today. But if you send the case in, we can look and see if we've got anything in our historical archives where somebody's asked that or if we've ever dug into those MSIs before. Usually, most of the time, scripted answers are usually the best way to go, or just by adding it into the command line if that supports a command line switch. We've got some other testing that we can do to try and help out with that, as well as some testing guides on that. But I don't have anything in particular just off the top of my head for Beyond Compare specifically.
Fair enough.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Great question. What other questions we got? I see it looks like Matthew.
Hey, what's going on? Quick question. If we decide to do like a preview of it and install the preview and get it all working, is it a major shift to actually, if we decide to buy the product, to actually enable it, or is it pretty simple?
Question. So the question is if you try it out, you install the trial and you do everything in there, and well, what's the work involved to do production? You do nothing.
Cool.
You do absolutely nothing. I update the license key on the back. Well, actually, I don't, but most likely somebody on our accounts team updates your license key once you send them money, and then it just, instead of it only lasting for 30 days, it lasts for however many days you bought the product for. So you do nothing. There is no difference. It is the exact same product. So when I say full production ready trial of the software, I really, really mean it's production. It's the same thing. The only thing that changes is when the license dies.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. What other questions do we have? I saw 3 hand raises, but I only answered 2 questions. I see Justin sneaking in here and being all sneaky like in the background. I knew it. I knew he was going to sneak in here and critique my demo at some point. I knew it was going to happen. See him down there in the chat.
Oh yeah.
Any other questions? Cool. No other questions, it sounds like.
All right. Okay, well, if there's no other questions for Jordan, why don't we plan to take just a short break before we jump right into the next session, since it's going to be Jordan continuing to speak to us. We'll give his vocal cords a rest and give everybody a chance to do bio break and whatnot. It's a 3 after the hour right now. Let's plan on just taking 7 minutes just to come back on a nice even number. We'll come back at 10 after. I'll repost the notepad doc so you guys can see and just be reminded of what that's going to look like. And then we will continue the conversation. And obviously, because it's Jordan that's going to be speaking, don't hesitate to, if there's questions that come up over the break, he's still going to be here to help answer. So
I suppose I could continue to answer questions about Patch My PC. No, I'm just kidding. I'm happy
yeah.
to. Happy to.